I'm Paul Stratman with Louisville Gas and Electric. We're here to talk about the new installation standards and expectations for builders and plumbers when they're having a new gas service installed. Effective January 1st, we had a rate case approved with the Public Service Commission that allowed LG&E to take over responsibility for what we can traditionally call the customer service. Everything from the property line all the way up to and including the meter set. So everything to the outlet of the meter is now LG&E's responsibility to install, maintain, repair, whatever the case may be. Anything associated with that has traditionally been the customer's responsibility is now on the company. We have had to make some changes to our business processes to line up with that expectation from the Public Service Commission. I've got a little chart here to step us through what the new basic process is, and we'll get a little more granular here as we go on this morning. But today, a customer applies for gas. It's the red stuff is customer responsible things. They will call into the call center. They'll apply for gas. That will create a work order that goes to one of our new gas locators, and there's at least one of them here today. I don't know if some others are going to make it this morning or not. They're going to verify the gas is available, and then they will make a call back to that customer, developer, whoever it is, within 2 business days and say, yes, gas is available, and here's what you need to do to get your gas service activated. There's some things that the customer has to take care of. We're asking the customer to basically install a conduit and have their house lines piped out. When that's taken care of, LG&E is going to come in and install that new service line through that conduit. Before we go out there, that same locator is going to go out and he's going to visually inspect, make sure everything's okay. He's going to release the job to the construction department, which is where I work, and then we're going to go out and get that service installed and the meter hung within 10 business days of the time that you guys say we're ready, and our inspector verifies that everything's in good shape. Does everybody understand that so far? Again, that's kind of at a high level. We'll get a little more detailed as it goes on.
10 days from when we call and say we want it ran till we get a meter?
Yes.
That's not faster than what we call a plumber to run our gas line. And then, we've already applied, we do the inspection, we used to get a meter quicker than 10 days.
Are you guys seeing that you're getting it faster than 10 days most times now? Because that's opposite from feedback I've heard from other developers. What's that?
Winter months, you're a little bit behind.
Yeah, I know we worked some overtime last Saturday to get caught up. We were behind on some.
Paul, did I hear you right? You're not digging anything. We're laying in a conduit. We're sleeving it, and you're.
Yes.
So you're not digging anything on site.
We will dig it up at the meter location and at the street line, but we're not going to be opening any trench lines.
But we're still opening a trench and laying.
That's correct.
We're just laying something else in the ground other than the gas.
Yes, and actually the gas line you've been using can be used as a conduit as well. It doesn't have to be PVC. It can be either the Schedule 40 PVC or the yellow polyethylene or the black high-density polyethylene, which is pretty rare. You're probably not, the supply houses probably aren't stocking that right now. But that would be another viable option. And again, that gas locator that we've defined in here, that they are to be your single point of contact. I know in the past there's been a lot of frustration. Call the call center, they say call construction. Construction gets it and says, oh, well, that's down at our other service center. You need to talk to so-and-so, you need to talk to this person, you need to talk to that person. Going forward, that locator will be the single point of contact for you guys, and the expectation's been set with them that if they don't know, they are to hunt down the appropriate resource inside the company and get back with the customer. We don't want to have to bounce all of our customers all over the company in order to find an answer. You've got one person to talk to. They'll find out the answer and get back with you if they don't know it off the tip of their head. And talking a little bit about what the customer will be responsible for typically on a residential or small commercial application, most of the 1/2-inch and 1-inch service lines is probably most of what you guys are installing. The customer will provide a conduit, either Schedule 40 PVC or a medium density polyethylene, that's the yellow coil gas pipe you guys have been using for years, or the high density polyethylene, which I think that's a pretty rarely used material. In fact, we don't use it at LG&E very often for much of anything. Still responsible to put the warning tape in that ditch line, and we've got a requirement for a pull rope to be installed in that conduit so that we can get that service line pulled there. The only specification on that is 100-pound pull strength. We may be modifying that here in the near future, but the way we've got the handbook published today, that's what the requirement is. And again, that's part of why we want these locators to be as involved as they are at the beginning. We don't claim to know everything there is and that our process is perfect, going to work perfectly straight out of the gate, and that's why we're meeting with you guys. That's why we've met with some of our crews. That's why we're inviting plumbers to these meetings too, is so that we can get through these humps as fast as we can in the first few months of this new business process. You got a question?
Yeah, how would, if your guys aren't digging it up, then we're terminating, the plumber is terminating the pipe up out of the ground?
It does not have to be. It needs to be staked above ground in some form or fashion to know what's there. Personally, I think the best way to do that would be to install an elbow and have a piece of the PVC or the polyethylene hard piped and rigidly connected to the underground portion. Then there's less opportunity for somebody to see a stake on a new job construction site and move it and do something with it. But
I thought about that, but when you go to cutting that pipe, you're gonna have that rope in there.
yeah,
So what we're planning on doing is just running a straight line. We put rubber caps on each end of it, and then we're gonna stick stakes in the ground at the end. Either paint them yellow, or we're probably gonna just take your tape, your gas tape.
to wrap it around there so then it's got the gas caution tape. You know it's obviously for gas and it's there.
That's
and it's
probably
ready
the
to go.
easiest way we thought of coming up with it.
Yeah, and we're likely to change that pull rope requirement. I have a feeling that on the typical residential stuff, we're probably not gonna need it. We can push it fine, probably up to 75, 100 feet without much issue. If we end up having some longer services, we're probably gonna have that requirement in there, but I'm pretty sure for the residential, the typical installations, based on feedback I've heard from some of you guys as well, and even some of our own crews, it's probably overkill and we don't necessarily need to go down that road.
So how are your guys verifying then? There's a couple of stakes in the ground. If they come by and they don't see stakes in the ground, they're gonna say it ain't ready?
That's exactly right. If it's not marked and it's not there and readily available for us to see that it's there, then we're not gonna be able to do the installation.
Sounds like the biggest change is we're gonna meet with one of your people on site before we ever do anything.
Absolutely.
Is that the
Yeah.
single biggest change? Because
That's-
we're still digging it and we're
You're
still putting
you're
pipe in the
still
ground.
installing it, trench, you're still installing the conduit. You'll be meeting with one of our guys ahead of time. And really, as you develop those relationships and everybody gets familiar with the new business processes, I don't expect that locator's gonna have to meet with you on every single job in the same subdivision time after time. But until you guys get familiar and comfortable with our processes and the locators get familiar with it and comfortable with it, we'll probably be meeting on most jobs. All right, yeah.
He had mentioned capping at both ends. I think that'd probably work on the street line side, but at the riser, we're gonna require them to create a bend coming up, and that could be the indicator of where it is, as well as being able to pull the plastic through that on the riser end.
We're talking about changing that. We haven't updated anything,
Okay.
so that's why I don't wanna get too far into
Okay.
revisions of that handbook. But there's a good chance that at least on the house side, we're gonna end up having a requirement that you put a long elbow in there or the polyethylene, the coiled polyethylene, and just bring that straight up out of the ground. And honestly, I think that's gonna work best for everybody. But until we had an opportunity to get feedback from you guys and we get it actually published, it's impossible to be consistent enforcing regulations and rules when we don't have it published. I don't wanna hold you guys' feet to the fire to meet an expectation that we haven't even documented. Yeah.
So what is the reason behind all this?
I've got a slide dedicated to that here in a minute. I'll get to that in just a minute.
Okay, and another question, in the past, when we ran the gas, had our plumbers run the gas line, I a lot of times coordinate with have them leave it open for a day and coordinate with my electrician to have the electric line on the other side of the 30-inch backhoe ditch. You have a problem with that?
No, we don't have a liquor problem with that. You can still install other utilities in that same ditch line. We've still got the same clearance requirements, like we require a foot separation between the gas and other utilities. You're just, instead of putting in the carrier pipe, you're putting in a casing pipe. acceptable meter locations. This shouldn't look too different than anything you guys have seen in the past. Still gotta keep 3-foot separation between the gas meter and any ignition sources, and at least 18 inches from any air intakes or vents. The depth of the conduit still hasn't changed, it's still an 18-inch change. And then getting on, we've talked to some of this stuff already. The conduit installation and meter location to the property and easement line will be the responsibility of the customer. We'll handle all the work in the easement and right of way as we always have. The customer's gonna be required to clear the work area around the conduit. Especially, I know it's been an issue on some jobs we've had in Norton Commons and is it Liberty Green downtown, where you've got buildings just real tight on one another. We're unable to do a meter installation because they've got scaffolding and bricklayers. Might not be the bricklayers on the property we came to, but everything's so tight it could be the scaffolding on the house next door. We've gotta have access to wherever that is. If there's portable restrooms out on the hole, again, that's pretty rare that would come up, or other materials would be installed. We've gotta have access to both ends where that conduit's been installed. We need to make sure final grade's clearly marked on the side of the house. This is something we've seen our turn downs, what we would call them a turn down, go up quite a bit here lately. Grade won't be marked, or it'll be obvious that grade is not set, and there's a meter bar hanging 4 feet in the air. The riser's only 36 inches long. There's obviously some grade work remaining to be done, and we're unable to hang the meter because we can't leave that plastic just hanging free in the wind. It's gotta be protected through that casing. And so that's been an issue. So we need to make sure final grade is marked and as close to grade completed, so that we can ensure that that plastic is underground when we get there, or when we install it. We'll install the meter and service brackets on the riser and on the meter loop. We're gonna set the meter loop. Need to make sure we got a rigid surface for them to attach to, which generally is gonna mean brickwork's gonna have to be done at least around the meter loop. Siding, if it's not up, I know a lot of the folks who lay the vinyl siding are notorious for pulling the meter loose because they don't want any penetrations through their siding, because they'll avoid the warranty, and then now you got a gas meter just hanging free in the wind. We need to make sure that your folks who are putting the vinyl siding up are understanding that needs to be taken care of, one, and then two, if the meter's not up and the siding's up, we're gonna be putting a hole in it so that we can attach that meter loop to the house. And obviously maintenance of the conduit and the end markers will be the responsibility of the customer until we get there. Generally, if it's all backfilled and put in, it shouldn't be an issue, but if somebody's trenching across that conduit after you put it in and they tear through it and break it, it's no different than if the gas pipe's already in there. If they tear through and break it, it's unavailable for us to insert through. And again, LG&E is going to be responsible for the pipe, the tracer wire, meter, regulator, brackets, and again, all the final surface has to be available for us to attach that meter loop to the house. Of course, we'll provide all the labor to do that installation as well. Based on some conversations our locators have had, and I've heard from some of you guys in conversations with you in the past, there are a number of questions that come up. What fees are associated with this work? There are no new fees being introduced by LG&E. This is all included in the residential rates that our customers are paying. So there are no direct fees to the customers, builders, or developers. Our main extension fees are the same as they've always been. They've actually gone down a little bit since last year, but the main installation process, the main extension process has not changed since the first of the year. This is only applying to new service installations. What appliances can you have to be eligible to tap a main? If you've got to extend a gas main, and this is an old business practice, this hasn't changed. You've got to have a major gas appliance in order to qualify for a main extension, the 100 feet free that you get. That's a furnace, water heater, gas light, dryer. Did I miss one, Bob? I feel like I'm missing one.
Yeah, it's the same major appliance.
Yeah, same major appliance. I think we actually just added dryer, or in the process of adding dryer. Generators, stoves, gas logs, log lighters are not considered a major bona fide gas appliance. They're not regularly used, or oftentimes are not regularly used, and so if that meter's not turning, it's.
That's for a main extension.
This is for main extension, yes.
For a service.
For a service, that's no different. if there's an existing main in an older part of town and you wanna install a stove, we'll give you that tap for free. But if it's on a pro rata main and all the other neighbors have paid for an extension, you don't get to tap that main for that. This goes back to one of the questions we had earlier, why is LG&E requested to take over this work? Federal regulations require that all this work be performed by somebody that has a DOT qualified drug and alcohol plan, as well as a DOT operator qualification plan. These are federal regulations that are getting tighter and tighter and tighter. The Public Service Commission in Kentucky actually enforces these regulations on us. They have not cited us. They have issued verbal warnings to one other utility in the state of Kentucky. Instead of waiting for a PSC citation or a DOT investigation or a DOT audit, we approached the PSC up front and said, look, we know this is on your radar. We want to go ahead and take this over. We are the last privately owned utility in the state of Kentucky to take this step. And when I go to American Gas Association, Southern Gas Association benchmarking around the nation, when I explain that we allow plumbers to handle that work from the property line up to the house, they look at me like I've got three heads. They're just unfathomable that goes on. And so we're just getting in line with the industry and getting in line with all the other private utilities in the state of Kentucky. In fact, I believe there's only 2 municipalities in the state of Kentucky now that haven't taken that over. So even in the municipality world, we're one of the very few number that haven't taken this step.
Paul, I know you're not the federal government, but what in the world does DOT have to do with gas line in the ground?
The Department of Transportation regulates gas pipelines, and that's where it comes from. I have no idea how it started or where it started. I know they passed the first legislation in the early 1970s, and the DOT has always been the federal branch that legislates gas pipelines and gas distribution systems. I don't have the full history on that, but they are our legislative body.
That seems like a really strange tie-in.
Yeah, there's actually a subset of the DOT, the Pipeline Hazardous, it's PHMSA, PHMSA, Hazardous Pipeline Safety Administration is a branch of the DOT, and they actually administer most of the programs for gas distribution.
How many gas customers do you have?
We've got about 325,000 gas customers.
So in land development, I remember asking Bob the question about whether or not you all voluntarily took this, and you did. So if it's, and I did the quick math, it figured 250,000, that'd be about a $7.5 million deal to LG&E to take over this responsibility. So, it's no savings to our customer, the new customer, and it's no savings to the builder. I mean, we still got to run that line. But when I think about it, I think, well, that's a lot of money. And I know about the insurance program that the water company has, where they're knocking out $1 million or 1.2 million or something for that insurance program that they have. This appears to me to be kind of the same kind of thing. You all are taking responsibility for that line.
Very similar.
But it just...
Well, it's going to be a savings to you in essence, because you can run a PVC line a lot cheaper than you can run the gas line and build a riser. Because it's about $50-60 to build a riser now, ain't it, Tony?
The biggest savings will be the materials on the riser and the meter loop. You're probably looking at, depending on if they're getting wholesale or retail, you're looking at $100-200 savings per unit on the material. The difference between PVC and polyethylene and digging the trench, it's pretty minimal. You're not looking at a big savings on that. I would call that probably.
Or your savings on the riser.
Your savings will be on the riser material.
So, practically speaking, what's to be gained here? I mean, why?
This ties into a much bigger.
Other than following the rules,
right?
Why does this matter?
This falls into a larger piece than just new services. We are also responsible for the maintenance and repair of existing services, and so we've got a lot of aging infrastructure out there. We've got a lot of services and a lot of gas mains that date back to Civil War and turn of the 20th century that are in need of replacement. And so in addition to the new services that are coming in, if a customer has a leaking service line that just gets discovered tonight in the middle of this cold weather, that customer is no longer responsible for contacting a plumber and going through all the issues associated with getting estimates, or maybe just getting one call and paying for that replacement. It's now the utility's responsibility to take care of that.
You're thinking over everybody's yard lines?
That's correct. That's correct.
But,
Even the ones you didn't put in?
Even the ones we didn't put in.
but if we come out there
Okay.
and we put a new line in, we're gonna test the house lines. When we do that, there was a leak on the house line, that falls back on the customer.
This does not, anything beyond the meter is still customer's responsibility to handle. So if there's house line issues, that remains customer responsibility. We're taking over basically all the DOT jurisdictional pipe, and the DOT regulates us and always has all the way to the outlet of the meter. In the past, if we had an issue that came up and we had to make an area safe, we would turn it off and tell the customer it's safe, it's taken care of, you need to find somebody so that you can get your service reestablished. Going forward, we will be the ones to make that repair. And that's all part of what the customers are gaining, in addition to the new service installations. It's all about ongoing maintenance and long-term maintenance associated with those lines.
You know, as we talked about in the meeting upstairs, my big concern would be you all being able to keep up with this. Because if we get back to 2006 numbers and we're doing 6,000 permits or something,
Yeah.
that's a lot of work.
Did you see this presentation beforehand? How are we gonna keep up with this workload?
No, but go
We-
ahead and show it to
We,
us.
we have brought in some additional resources from contractors we've already got agreements with, the Miller Pipeline, Fishel, and Southern. They have all ramped up and brought in some additional folks to help us keep up with this. If we're unable to keep up with it, we'll be bidding out additional contracts and bring more folks in. We've got a commitment to our customer base that we've got to do this. And if that means we bring in new employees, bring in new contractors, it's on us to make that happen, and that's our responsibility to do.
And on the locator side, Roger, we identified what we projected as the work that's in the next year or so as far as gas services, and we staffed 4 new gas locators. We did this a few years ago on the electric side. We started with 4, and we're now up to 9. So we can move those locators in pretty quickly, because we're gonna use our existing resources and then backfill those existing resources. So if we have folks that are doing gas design, we'll move those folks in to be locators, so they're not starting from scratch, and then backfill those other positions, designer positions. So we have a pretty good mechanism. We've done this on the electric side. So I think the biggest concern that you guys will have is with the locators, not so much with construction. I think getting someone out on your site within 2 business days when you first initially call them and taking care of that locator role, I think is gonna be key as we start to move forward, and as the building homes start to increase.
Even from a construction standpoint, back when we were down at 13th Street, probably down in 2001, 2002, when new business was through the roof, we were installing 8,000 new meters a year. Now we're down to around 2,000. We used to have 8 to 10 contract crews who were going out and just doing the connect portion of stuff that we were doing up to the end of last year, just connecting those services. We had 10 crews doing that. By about 3 years ago, we had taken all that work on internally and didn't have any contractors doing that work, or very rarely did we have a contractor doing that work. So as a company, and even in the gas business, we're very used to ramping up and ramping down our workforce as the workload dictates. And then again, I know Bob attends the Home Builders Association's meetings on a regular basis. You guys are in close with Dave French as well. And then I've made this statement internally to a lot of our engineers and our employees, and I'll make the same to you, is we've got our customer piping handbook that it probably gets revised every 2 years, every 3 years. This year, we're probably looking to revise it 3 or 4 times, just because we know we're gonna be adapting. We're gonna get feedback from you guys, we're gonna get feedback from our crews, and we wanna make this as painless and as easy going for everybody involved in the process the whole way. So whereas we're gonna be responsible for installing that pipe and hanging that meter, that part's not gonna change. If there's a better way to skin the cat than the way we've got it outlined right now, we're willing to meet with you guys, and we're willing to work through some of that as it goes on. We're not stuck on these rules the way they're published today. And that's part of what we're here today for, is to get some feedback from you guys on what pitfalls you see. And you guys may not see too many of them until we get further down the road, but we're willing to meet with you guys and hear that and see if we can't get some of this taken care of.
Is that your last slide?
I believe it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
If I could just take a moment here to ask this. Let's make the assumption that's the house, and somehow that ends up being the garage, and the gas service is on here. In fact, let's do this. Let's just say, forget about this line right here. This is the garage. The gas service and the subdivision's on this side of the lot. I want the gas meter to end up right there. And there's a rule about how far off the driveway the gas meter can be, right?
No. If it's within 3 feet of the driveway, it's gotta have a protective bollard in front of it, but there's nothing that says it can't be right up next to the driveway.
Okay, I could have it right there. In other words, let's just say that that's how I'm gonna end up doing the driveway.
Okay.
And that is greater than 3 feet. That makes that okay?
Yeah,
Okay. You hope your locators know that, because that's gonna end up happening a lot to everybody in this room, probably. And, you know, I would understand that if they took the driveway up against the house, then that wouldn't be the case. But if we did that, because the wheels of the car are never gonna end up in that spot anyway, they could.
if there's 3 feet of clearance, we don't require any additional protection around that meter. If there's less than 3 feet, and even if that meter is in the driveway, you've gotta put a protective bollard, which is pretty much just a piece of 4-inch steel pipe there, so that it's not gonna stop any going full speed, but if you're backing in, backing out at reasonable driveway speeds, they're gonna hit that bollard before they hit that gas meter. And that rule hasn't changed. That rule's been out there for, I couldn't tell you how long.
Keep in mind, we also have updated the corporate website. There's a link from y'all's site over to the corporate website that has all the new locators information on them. It also has Dave's information on it, Jim Holderman, Mark Gaynor, myself. So all of our information's out there. If you have questions or have any issues, you can call us and we'll
We
run
brought
that
some
for you.
pamphlets for the new customer guidelines, as well as our copies of our customer piping handbook, so if you guys don't have them. I don't have a whole lot of these. If you could limit to taking 1 or 2, I would appreciate that, but I've got thousands upon thousands of these, so take as many of these brochures as you would like to help clarify it. So, little miscommunication with the printer somewhere, and I think we ordered 5,000, we got something like 50,000 of them, so. You could take as many of these green pamphlets as you want. Is this brand new news to anybody? I know we've been trying to get this word out. Is there any extra concerns or issues you guys have before, you got me until 11 o'clock?
I don't question.
Yeah.
Paul, can you talk to existing services, just kind of maybe give us an overview of that, existing services or gas service requests prior to January 1st of 2013. So, we have talked about this a little bit.
Somebody who's in that, what we're calling that transition period.
Yeah, transition period.
We're giving ourselves and everyone until until April 1st to get through this transition period. And I'm gonna ask Bob to speak a little bit about that, because Bob, you're getting a few guys lined out to start calling these folks in advance to explain to them what the new business process is, meet with them on site if needed, and make sure they understand what those rules are, so that we can all, especially come April 1st, we're all on the same page and we're all together.
Right,
when it all
Linda
comes to be.
and Ryan are gonna be those two folks that are doing that. They're gonna be calling customers, but it's important to understand, this is for folks that have requested a gas service before we took ownership, which is January 1st of 2013. So if you already had an existing request for gas service, we're gonna try and move those orders from the existing system over to the new system and try to work through getting those things resolved. If we can resolve them before March 31st or April 1st, April Fool's Day, then that'd be great. We can do that. If we can't, then we'll need to move you guys over, move those service requests over to the new system, and that's what these two folks are going to be calling about.
And that's all about, if we can get all those internally, if we get all those work orders moved into the new business process and they're all following the same path, that's gonna ease that transition period all the more. If everybody understands what it is, we can move them out of the old way of doing things, move them into the new way of doing things, and then we can more closely monitor that 10-day commitment we've made in here. We can more closely monitor who's really ready for gas and who's not. Just we've got some workflow issues we've got to work through, but instead of just dumping everybody over, we want to make sure that we've got somebody getting in touch with you guys or the customers to understand what's expected going forward.
Maybe this is not a valid question, Paul, but
You're known for that.
I can see this happening. You got your builder that's don't have internet. You got a plumber that's not keeping up on stuff, and we show up on a job. They call in for a test and connect. The plumbers actually run the gas line like they did 6 months ago, 8 months ago, or a year ago, and that's going to happen. We're going to show up, and the service is going to be in. The riser is going to be mounted. I guess my question is, are we going to show some forgiveness toward that in the beginning until we get everybody acclimated?
And that's what this transition period is all about, is making sure, because we know that there are guys out there who are working on things. They may not be aware of this. We have sent those letters out to every plumber who we've got on record who has ever called into us. This probably doesn't apply to many of the folks in here. Most of you guys have seen the letter. Your names are widely recognized throughout the community as doing plumbing work, but that's not to say there's not somebody who does one or two on the side, whose brother-in-law does some plumbing work or whatever. He says, hey, you know what, Rocky, I got a guy who can do the plumbing work to save me a few bucks on this house. Can we work with that? I'm sure you guys are probably working with your customers to do that. That's not to say that that fella doesn't understand what the rules are, though. And that's why we'll be getting in touch with everybody who's made application before the first of the year. And then again, we've got this grace period in here where we know that
So we're not going to show up being
we're not going to show up
rigid.
and turn
This is,
that.
yeah.
And if they applied for gas after January 1st, it's showing up in a locator's queue, and that's why that locator's meeting with them personally up front for all the jobs that came in after January 1st, so that there's no, I didn't know the rules. They had a one-on-one meeting with you, and they've got it all documented, who they spoke to and what they told them. Yeah. Yes, sir.
So when we're starting a home as a builder, and we call LG&E for temporary pole and then make permanent electric and gas application, that all still stays the same?
Yes.
Or are we not making gas at that time?
You do not change when you apply for gas. That has not changed. What happens after you apply for gas changes, but that's more inside the company than it is to you. Basically, after you make application for gas, at some point within 2 business days, somebody from Bob Rose's group, and Dane Doty's one of the locators who's in here today, will make contact with you, make sure you understand what the new regulations are and what the expectations are, and we'll meet you on site if needed to say, you know, make sure you stub it out here or stub it out there.
That's smart.
Yeah, because we may not have a foundation in that, because we're doing it.
That's exactly right.
We're doing it when we call it.
Oh, yeah, you guys apply for gas long before
Okay.
you guys are ready for that, and we don't expect that to change. We don't expect that to change.
Can you talk a little bit more, looks like there's several plumbers in here, talk a little bit more maybe about the reimbursement for program. I know there's for replacement, but it may affect some of these folks, customers
Yeah,
and
if
them.
this isn't for the new services, but if a customer has had their service line replaced due to a leak in the last 2 years, they are eligible to be reimbursed. You don't happen to have US&C's phone number handy, do you?
No, sorry.
There's a phone number that you can call to make a claim. Can somebody make a note of that so that when we get back to the office, I'll make sure that gets added to the presentation and that the lady upstairs is aware of it. But if you have replaced a service line because their service has leaked since January 1 of 2011, LG&E is reimbursing those customers if they can provide proof that it happened. And of course, we check our records and verify that we actually went out there and did a reconnect and go from there. But if they did have their service replaced due to a leak, not because they added a garage and they had to relocate it, and not because they were a new service, first time the home's ever been built, but if somebody had to replace it due to a leak, we are reimbursing those costs.
So you're saying when we get our bids from plumbers now, we should be expecting a decrease in the bid?
I don't know what they're gonna do.
Tell them, Jeff.
I'm not commenting right now. One thing I would like to go back to, when the builders call in, can the builders give them, say, my contact at Don Hire or their plumber's contact? What I'm trying to do is, the way we do it now, the builder doesn't do anything as far as calling in stuff and for LG&E. Can we do it that way still? When he calls in, the builder says, my contact is so-and-so with my plumber?
Yes, yeah,
And
they
working
can
through
provide
that, so
the
the builder
contact
doesn't have
information
to-
the same, yes.
'Cause what's gonna happen is these builders are gonna have a leak or something, they're gonna keep calling the builder's gotta get back to the plumber. It would just eliminate one more step if we can deal directly with you all.
Yeah,
Being the plumbing
if when you're
contractor.
applying for gas, if you make sure that you have, there's customer information and there's contact information. And I believe that those are given separately to the call center when you apply for gas. If you make sure that that contact information is your plumber or your job foreman or whatever the case may be, whoever you want to be the primary point of contact. And for gas, it only makes sense that it would be whoever your primary mechanical or plumbing contractor would be on that job site. And I believe that should show up in the system that way.
It's working now, right
Okay.
now.
Yeah, we've been seeing some of it, not everybody's doing that, but we've been seeing some of that.
Yeah.
And are y'all making them fill out load slips if they do not?
Almost every job is gonna require some load slips.
Okay, because right now, we just call in and say it's a common, or if it's under 500,000, we just call it in as a common. We're not filling out a load slip for y'all.
We've been asking for load slips almost everything.
Yeah, I'll give you the that's what I'm trying to do.
And I think all our work orders, they'll show customer information, they'll show contact information, so if
Like
it's,
people like Rocky's got 4 or 5 superintendents that are running his jobs, and it's just a whole lot easier if the plumber stays in contact with you all.
yeah.
Keeps them out.
And even on our standard work orders, it's, especially if you guys have, in your personal lives, if you guys have accounts where if your mother's service is going bad or your mother is unable to take care of things and you're helping her out with stuff, if you've got your information on that contact with the utility, that helps us make sure we get in touch with the right people. That's something I would stress to everybody in here is a lot of times the last thing people think to do when they get rid of their landline and go to cell phone only, or they change their phone number, they don't necessarily think to let the utility know. For a lot of reasons, it's nice to make sure that your contact information is still accurate with the utility company, so that if you're experiencing an electric outage or if you're experiencing a gas outage, if you've got a gas outage, we have to come get inside your house to relight appliances. We can't just flip a breaker off a quarter mile down the road and turn on the whole neighborhood. And so it's important to make sure that your contact information is accurate with the utility company. So does that show up on their bills? I'm thinking it got taken off of there for some reason. I don't know what the story is with that, but I would encourage you, especially if you're already on online bill pay or anything like that, to make sure that your personal contact information is accurate, because that's the only way when you're not home for us to have any opportunity to get in touch with you as a utility. Yes.
I've got that number, for underwriter safety.
Oh,
and claims.
okay, yeah.
The third-party administrator that we have for our claims processing, if you have customers who basically had services replaced in the last 2 years, the number is 502-489-6199. And they can turn their claim in through them. That's underwriter safety and claims, and then we'll look at it and potentially approve it and get them reimbursed.
And if that customer can have the address of the service, a copy of their bills or invoices or cleared checks or whatever proof of payment they've got, and the date or approximate date of the work, that just helps us do the research on our end and get an answer faster to them. Because the first thing they're gonna ask to see when they file that claim is, can we get copies of the receipt, so they might as well have that information up front if they have it.
And you'll add that to your presentation before sending it over?
As long as Cindy doesn't run off after with that number. I think I've got it in my iPhone. I can add it.
I think that's all I can
Anything
think
else?
of as
Not
far
necessarily
as
about new
program.
services, about LG&E in general. I may not have the answer, but I'll let Bob find out what it is for you. Or Dave.
I'll just make it up.
That gets me in trouble when you do that.
I'm sure there's other things that I hadn't even thought of yet that, you know, this will be a learning process, I guess, for all of us
Yeah.
going forward. But, you know, as I said upstairs before, you know, if you all can get as good as Atlas is, then I think the rest of, I don't think you'll hear a lot of bad stuff from the
Dave,
builders.
Atlas runs the lines, right?
Yeah, what's better
I
for
think
you?
they do.
Atlas runs the lines, but we don't run sleep.
Right.
And then they charge you a whole lot more for the gas too, but that's, I'm just saying.
Jump in there.
So in essence, you're really paying for that line you think you're getting for free, but
Who's paying?
you are, the customer is.
Okay. There's a difference.
I'm not familiar with Atlas's rate structure. I don't know if they have a tap
Yeah,
fee for services. I don't.
Chime in, Sandy, go ahead.
Somebody else could speculate on that one, but
I
it's
won't be
all
the only one getting in
speculation. I'm
trouble.
not opening my mouth on that.
You just made that up, didn't you?
No,
Probably did.
no.
But Rocky, we talked before, we can get back together in a few months and kind of see what kind of issues we got and what kind of problems people are having, and, you know, we'll keep meeting until we get stuff worked out.
And the logic behind that conduit is, last thing we wanna do is end up behind on our schedule, and then you guys have got sod laid, and now we gotta go tear through it, and now we're 10 kinds of you know what, cause we just tore up sod or final restoration, or our driveway got poured before we got there, and we don't wanna have to mess with that right now. I don't think you guys want us to have to cut a driveway you just poured.
Well, I think, I would think that that's not very good planning on the builder's position if that's what happened, if we didn't think that far ahead. I don't think there's anybody in this room that would be guilty of that.
But we also don't
But
want,
I'm sure
we also don't wanna be the ones slowing things down, because you're ready to pour, you got scheduled to pour, and then we're 2 days behind, and now you've got a concrete truck sitting there, and you got nowhere for them to go. And
No, it
that's-
makes
we
sense.
definitely wanna avoid that as much
Your
as we
plumber's
can.
out there with a ditch open with a water line, all he's doing is throwing a piece of conduit in the same ditch.
Yep.
And you're not having to dig a separate ditch.
Yep.
So, I mean, it's a no-brainer for the plumber side of it. And that's why I'm trying to keep you all out of it. It should be the same for you all. You all shouldn't have to do any more work as long as I keep running through my office like we have been.
So you're gonna meet LG&E out there?
Well, I say that. We've done it enough. I mean, once, we're supposed to talk after this, but once we've done it and got it to where it's supposed to be, I don't think we would have to meet your all's.
I don't know that you would have to meet beforehand,
Yeah.
we would do an afterwards inspection, just to
Right.
make sure it's where we think it's supposed to be, and everything's ready for us to do what we have to do, but that post-inspection is more for our benefit, so that we don't send a 2-man truck out there to do something that's not ready.
Right. But the letter that y'all are sending out saying that they want to inspect the ditch is not,
We don't need to see that ditch when it's open, we just need to make sure it's deep enough when we get out there, we don't need to see that whole open ditch line.
So you need site tubes for the conduit?
What's that?
Do you need site tubes? Conduit turned up so you can check down the tape?
We need some way to locate where it is on either end. Ideally, in my mind, it's gonna be to just
locate
run
it.
that PVC
Yeah.
up, but that's still open for discussion right now.
Because you're fishing tracing wire
Yep.
as you push the pipe.
Yep.
you might explain to them services over X amount of feet.
Yeah,
I don't
there
know
is
if y'all come up with that yet.
there is the potential for charges if the service is over 100 feet long. We've had a few that were applied for that, but we have not enforced that to date. I have a feeling that unless there's some pretty extenuating circumstances, we're probably not gonna be charging for services that are 200 feet long or 300 feet long. We may need some breaks in that line and that conduit so that we can have some pull points, but outside of that, unless you're crossing a creek or crossing railroad tracks, and again, that's gonna be probably more on the commercial side of things and the industrial side of things, especially for the railroad tracks. I don't anticipate there being much in the way of fees associated with it over 100 feet long. Our tariffs structured that we can if we need to, but we're trying to learn that on our own and get some of that clarified. This first year, we're gonna be monitoring that to see if we really are experiencing a lot more costs on those jobs that are over 100 feet, and then probably have some more defined and refined policies by the end of the first year.
Are you gonna have a structured memo like, if you're putting in a half-inch, gas line, the conduit has to be a
Yes.
minimum of
Yeah.
inch
And
and a
that's-
half,
that's-
2 inch, whatever, I mean, that
That's
needs to
all,
be.
that's all outlined in the handbook. Right now, we've got 2-inch conduit. We've worked with a couple plumbers already who are doing some special installations, and I think we're probably gonna reduce that size for half-inch services probably down to 1.25 inch, but that'll be probably one of the first revisions that come out. But the minimum conduit size is already outlined in that handbook.
Cause I can see a guy getting out there and trying to save money and put a 3/4, 1 inch conduit in for a
Yeah.
half-inch line.
Yeah. Any more questions? Bob looks like he's ready to run out.
No, I'm ready, we're gonna meet again, we're gonna meet somewhere.
Yeah, I know you wanted to sit down with Jeff.
Thank you.
I appreciate your time, guys.
Thank you.